Hey everybody, can you see me? Got my phone turned around backwards. Say, I'm going to give you a little supplement on this job I'm doing on this 55 Chevy. If you got a Tri-5 Chevy, a lot of people want, you put a better motor, bigger motor, you want to have a little bit bigger tire in the back. And a lot of people are limited on what they can do because of the leaf springs. And so since I'm down here and I'm working on this thing, I'll just kind of send this up so anyone that may be interested can see how I did it. Guy wants working on it. I changed the rear end, had a 12-bolt rear end over here. And so now I'm up under here. And what I'm doing is, since all the rear end and all is out of the way, I'm going to show you how I'm going to get, when you remove the leaf spring, you automatically get a little more tire clearance. But then, let me show you, you run into the problem with the wheel wells. There's another almost 3 inches of clearance that you can gain by getting the sheet metal and the rear end tub, the wheel tub, out of the way. And let me show you kind of real quickly how I measured and how I cut and how I got this thing cleaned up a little bit to get the maximum amount of tire clearance. You can actually get about a 12-inch tire up underneath here when you get all this stuff out of the way. Let me show you. Okay, the leaf spring mount. This is the frame, of course, goes back here. This is the piece of sheet metal that I'm talking about. This is the wheel tub. And you've got some sheet metal that's between the frame, and you can get that out of the way. It requires a little bit of work, but you can clearance. Oops, sorry. You can get. If you're looking at this is the piece of tin. This is the part I'm talking about. You can get this wheel tub to move all the way over against this frame. That'll give you another 2 or 3 inches. Because between the outer, body and the frame is, let me show you, put this thing here, is roughly 16 inches to the inside little lip. So, while you're in here and you're doing this, you're trying to get some more tire clearance. He wants to run a 12-inch tire, but let me show you how to get this clearance, because you got to get this out of the way. Okay, and the way I'm going to show you I did it, I took this flat edge ruler and laid it up against the frame, and you can see, I'm going to try to do this holding the phone and as much as I can. You see that silver line? I went all the way around with a Sharpie pen and followed that all the way down, because I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to cut this whole wheel tub out, get rid of this, and then I'm going to move this tub all the way over and weld it back in against here. That way when you open the trunk, what you're looking at is a basically stock appearing trunk without a performance looking wheel tub. Or a mini tub. You're gaining the clearance, but you're using this old tub because it's got to be cut out of here. Okay, let me just show you Sharpie pen. Okay, Sharpie pen. With that, you follow that line, follow the frame all the way down, because that's what you're going to be cutting out. And then at the end of the tub, you're going to come across and you're going to cut that out. And then inside the trunk, where the peak of the tub is, there's a seam right there. They're seamed together. This was a separate piece. They probably sell that piece, at one of these aftermarket deals, but I'm going to reuse the one he has. And then I'm going to cut it right down the middle of that seam all the way down, so that this whole piece all the way over to here, so you can see I've followed the frame with the Sharpie pen, squared it off across here. But you're not going to be square. When you cut the top part, you're going to round this off, because this is rounded. This is just a place that tells me that that's as far as I need to go. And then after you draw this line, so inside when you're cutting, you know where you are. I drilled some little 1/8" holes. So this is as far as it's going to go when you're inside. It's easier to cut. You're going to be cutting from both sides, but these little 1/8" holes I put in here, this one right there, because when I'm on the top side, I'm going to draw the line also and follow those little 1/8" holes. So I know when I'm cutting on the top that that's where I need to be, so that that sheet metal, the trunk sheet metal, is even with this frame. Tiny little hole, all the way around. Okay, but that's what I'm doing. I'm gaining tire clearance so that the rear end is going to put that tire right in the middle. And all of this, you can lower the car, and this will be this tub, this portion of the tub from right here on this flange. See that little flange sticking down to the center of the seam is going to be moved over all the way against this thing. Now, I've already done the other side. I just wanted to show you this first. And let me take you up there and I'll show you. I've already moved that tub and I've got it tacked in. And after it's all tacked in really good, you come back with the 3M seam sealer. And that'll make sure you don't get any moisture. But drilling these little holes tells me on the top side how I can follow this line. Now let me go up there and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, here's the other side. It's already cut out. Here's that, well, let me show you. There's my series of little lines. You see there's a tiny little hole right here. Tiny little hole right here. And it goes on down all the way to the end. Now I'm going to show you what I had to do on the inside of the car. Of course, you got to take that back seat panel out, because you're going to be doing a lot of cutting and grinding. You won't catch nothing on fire. But here's where that seam is. It comes down, goes up inside of there. You're going to be cutting right along this line right here, all the way down. Then you're going to intersect coming across, and you're going to round this because this is round. And when you go to slide it over, you want to try to get it and keep it as close to the sheet metal so you can make a real nice, you're not going to square it way out here, otherwise you'll have to fill that in. But here's what I'm talking about. Okay, I've already moved this one. Cut the back of the seat panel, came straight down, followed that line. This is already, I just put 3 or 4 tacks on it, pushed it, clamped it up against this panel as tight as I could. Put some tacks to hold it in place. Came down. I'm gonna have to fill in this with seam sealer, but tapped it tight up against here. Put tacks on it, and this is the piece that got cut out. That's how much clearance that he's gained between the frame and the outside body of the car, all the way down. Just cut all along that top line as close as I could. There's gonna be I'm going to get some strips of the same thickness sheet metal, and then I'm going to, from the inside, I'm going to put those tight up against here and go walk down it and tack it. Then this will all be seam sealed, and the body and frame, the body guy will fill it all in probably. It's just so when you open the trunk. Oh, and let me show you this other thing. You see that brace for the hinges on the trunk? I cut that, let's see if I can find it here, right along the top. You can see I cut it, and it used to be in here. Now I've moved it all the way to the outside here. I'll go ahead and weld all this in, smooth it out. The body guy that'll give this trunk the support that it had from the factory. There's a little bracket over here. I had to cut that out of the way. It's not on the other side. But anyway, that whole tub gets moved over up against the body, even with the frame, so that now all the tire clearance possible without a mini tub or cutting the frame has been achieved. You can easily get a 12-inch tire in there. And so let me show you on the inside here. Well, let me show you up underneath here first. See, that's what it's going to look like. It's all been cut out. That flat panel now is right up against the frame. And all the way down, and it wraps around, follows. This will all be filled in with a piece of sheet metal. Then I'll fill in that with seam sealer, and it goes all the way up, all the way around. You got to take the seat out, and here's the thing. I couldn't cut that squarely because I really wasn't sure, so I'm gonna have to take a piece of sheet metal and fill that whole square in, but I couldn't successfully round it off. But I got the piece all the way moved over. This will all be filled in, and then now, of course, the back of the seat will cover that. Now there will be a little bit of problem. You can retain the seat. See, here's the other side. It hasn't been cut yet. It just comes in. That piece fills in, but you got to cut the same amount of whatever, you know, that amount is. I think it's almost 2.5 to 3 inches out of this back panel, so that whole tub gets moved over and tacked back in here. And then I had to lift this, take the screws out, and leaving the window crank on just while I was cutting, get that lifted up. Of course, move this bottom seat forward, and the back of the seat where this wheel tub normally goes, I'm thinking, because I've moved this whole thing over, we may have to lose this this one support right here. I may have to cut that on both ends here and then over here, because this is probably now going to interfere since I moved this panel over. And hopefully it'll sit back down in there, and then you can retain your back seat without, and have a 12-inch tire in the back, at least a 12, 13. I wouldn't go 14. I mean, it would be up to you. If you can get a 14 in there squarely, you just got to cut the rear end, use the right offset on your wheel. But you can see how that panel goes right up against there. You know, I had to kind of pivot it without taking this knob off, take those screws out, move all this stuff out of the way while I'm cutting and grinding, because you got to get way down in there to get that panel cut out successfully. But I just wanted to show you, it helps to have a little welder, 110 or 220. These are the tools you're going to need. You're going to need a reciprocating saw with a fine tooth blade, fine tooth, because this sheet metal is real thin and cuts it real smooth. Cut off wheel and a smoothing disc to do this kind of thing. So this is the old rear end took out. This was 61 3/4 inches from the backing plate to the backing plate of the drum, and the new rear end is 56.5. So I've gained quite a bit, narrowed the rear end quite a bit. You know, these are the wires that go to the brake lights and all that. I'm going to get that out of the way while I'm cutting, but this tub will be cut out. That brace will move to the other side of this support that happens to just about be the right thickness of this right here. So I doubt Chevrolet had that in mind, but you can see that the brace is naturally put on the back here, just cut up along the bottom right at this 90, and then this bracket stays on this piece, gets welded onto the outside of this one here, and then of course this is the piece you got to fill in because you're cutting this all out. Here's the piece that came out. It was just from the behind the seat, kind of traveled down this way, and here's the piece in the trunk. I kind of did my best to square it off, get it rounded off. It'll all get filled in with seam sealer, and you just want to keep it as tight as you can, fill in all the gaps so no water gets in. But you gain clearance when you take the springs off from a leaf spring rear end, and then you get another almost 3 inches of clearance to give you that 17 inches and still retain a fairly stock, you know, appearance when you open the trunk. So, you know, tearing up a good car, but he wants bigger tires, and That's the way it works. That's the way I do it anyway. There are probably other ways to do it, but that's the way I do it. So just thought I'd show you that. Hope it helps somebody get some ideas along the way. We'll see you next time.